All right, so some new updates today on the Bitcoin ETF. We'll break it all down for you. Could be an explosive Friday coming up on this one, so stick around for this one. It's going to be a good one. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. Before we get started, thank our sponsor, and that is iTrust Capital. If you guys are looking at long-term holding and you want to do it in a crypto IRA, this is one of the places you can go. And if you go over to their market section, you can kind of get a chance to see everything, including the trending tokens, Avalanche Holding, Axie on there, Solana, Shiba, and then even getting into precious metals, all of that available. Remember, no cost to actually get into iTrust, so there's no monthly fee. All you do is pay your transactions when you're making trades within your IRA. So it's a great place to start. If you want to get into long-term holding, use our link down below. You get a $100 funding reward and get started. All right, let's go into a few things here. The big news, of course, today is this right here. At least 3 SEC commissioners now are for the SEC ETF approval. If this is the case, the question is, which commissioners are this? And you got to kind of be cautious here because we could also get a rug pull under one of these commissioners as well. And you think about Hester Pierce. She's been very vocal and I would say pro, Bitcoin and in general blockchain, but also UETA. We've reported both on these, but I'm kind of curious who is that number 3, if in fact this is going to be the case. And remember that UETA, I'll kind of highlight a couple of points from this report right here. On the heels of a very successful Star Wars and 77 fan, excitement was high, delight of millions of children in that holiday season. This is UETA. This is a guy, he's a Star Wars fiend. So interesting that they actually brought that out on the SEC's website. And one of us can speak to this enthusiasm. What he's talking about is the enthusiasm for these markets and the potential for the collectible side and all that kind of stuff. So it really plays into an interesting position. Now, all that being said, you have to look back at where is this coming from? Well, here's Nick DeRossi. He's kind of hitting on a little bit of this. Update on spot Bitcoin ETF. Sources close to the proceedings say the SEC could begin notifying issuers of approval on Friday with trading actually beginning as early as next week. If that were to happen, what would the market do? What would the market do in terms of Bitcoin, ETH, and other altcoins? I think when you think about the blue chips, what would happen to Avalanche? What would happen to Solana, Cardano? Where do you guys think that would start taking the market? Drop some comments down below. And here's my question to you. If you had Bitcoin in an ETF and you start seeing this move at this level, whether we get a pop, would you really move heavily into altcoins and take a look at maybe just diversifying your portfolio a little bit more? I'm kind of curious of some of the strategies you guys are using. If you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure and subscribe right now. Take a minute, hit that little subscribe button, and also give us some likes because that's one of the things that help our videos get discovered is just by hitting that like button. It does help, and that's going to help other people kind of learn about what's happening in the space, and maybe for the first time jumping into whether it's altcoins, Bitcoin, ETH, whatever it might be. You're going to help them out. All right, so here was Jeremy Hogan, and it was basically on the BlackRock filing 2 weeks ago. He had 3 changes of any substance. Those changes related to the broker role. This was the cash craze, which was BlackRock making changes at the request of the SEC. We reported on that, and I think this doesn't really mean that there's a denial, but the fact that we do have some changes coming in it's interesting, that we continue to see this. But I think with these kind of scenarios that are playing out within the SEC and the markets, there's a lot of backroom, I won't say deals, but just issues that have to be resolved around this. And I guess for the purpose of the SEC is for them to, I think, look good, save face, so to speak, overall. So that may be a big part of this. I just wonder, is this going to be one that gets a short-term pop, or is this one that sustains? I'd love to get your feedback on this. We've kind of had kind of discussions here within our research team, looking at what that might cycle out. Because remember, if Bitcoin continues to climb, if we do get some rate cuts from Chair Powell, if we do see an adjustment in the GDP, if we see inflation continuing to slow and jobs starting to get a little bit more pressure, does that create, kind of this perfect storm for a Bitcoin ETF in terms of timing? So all of this plays in some very interesting situations for sure. Goldman Sachs also may play a key role in spot ETFs. This is coming in via this report right here. And a couple of points I want to hit on here is if Goldman Sachs, which is crazy, Could serve as an authorized participant to BlackRock and Grayscale Investment spot ETFs, meaning the Wall Street juggernaut would be permitted to purchase and redeem shares directly from the ETF. That's crazy. You know, when you think about Jamie Dimon, just the things that are going on there with Goldman, for sure. Interesting. All right, I want to play a couple clips for you guys. And as I said, I want to get your opinion because, I mean, here we are Thursday, releasing this video. Maybe you watched it on Friday and there's news in the market now that this actually did happen. If the insider reports coming in from Gerasi are correct, this would be a huge weekend in these markets. But I want to go and jump over to the volatility potential of Bitcoin once something like this does happen. Do you think it's going to get more volatile or less volatile? Let me know. Listen to this clip right here.
The activity starts in the spot market, but then once the institutions arrive, it is quickly eclipsed by the derivatives market, so the futures and the options markets. And most of these, most commodity markets, the futures and options markets are multiples the size of the spot market. So I would expect a lot more activity going on there. I think the other interesting part of that is that you actually might tamp down a bit of volatility in the cryptocurrency market and Bitcoin because you're going to have multiple players, some people hedging, some people doing basis trades, some people just doing option strategy. So I actually think you might see less volatility once the institutions do arrive and start playing those games.
And this is something that has been argued back and forth. Is an ETF good for Bitcoin, or is it going to be a slow grind to maybe, a much more stable asset? I think both work, but what I would look for is the alternative mechanism, much like what we've seen in just the S&P 500, is that there are a certain handful of stocks that people look at, and whatever sector you might be in. And then there are those investors who are looking for those more volatile. So where would that be? Well, it would be altcoins. So when you think about altcoins, you have to think, all right, is this something like, mid caps or small caps playing in the crypto side of things? Listen into this clip right here because they're talking about altcoins on CNBC. Listen in.
I know you're also somewhat enthusiastic about what could happen with Ethereum and a lag effect here, but I care more about your view about the broadening of the entire crypto space. I mean, is a Polkadot or, some of these other names, are they going higher? Are you investing there? Because that, to me, on some level, is a lot more important than what Bitcoin does from here.
So you rightly bring up names like Polkadot or Cosmos Atoms or even Solana or some of these and those aren't second tier. Those are probably, higher in the first tier. But you're starting to see the rally broaden out. And most importantly, you're actually seeing from some of these cryptocurrencies actual things being built on them. So we're seeing decentralized exchanges getting a lot of activity. We're seeing decentralized lending and places in the DeFi space starting to get a lot of loans going out there and a lot of total value locks. So all these indicators are telling me that the bull market is broadening, the fundamentals are supportive, and I think we're probably in the beginning of this 12 to 18-month bull market, which should spread to the rest of the currencies. And to answer your question directly, I am investing in all of those.
Interesting face right there. I don't know if this is the this is the new investor for Bitcoin and altcoins in general. But hey, listen, there's a couple of things they did say there. First of all, I love the fact that they love Cosmos Atoms. That's a great token. I'm not making fun. I'm just having fun. Point being is that I think we're going to see mainstream kind of wage into this. The reality, though, I think, is there's this massive demographic separation that has occurred. And I don't mean that in an ageist way at all. It's just the people that are interested in different things. And I think that's the thing we're going to be dealing with in the altcoin space is there's just going to be people who are interested in gaming, NFTs, a lot of what we're seeing in terms of the alternative markets out there in the altcoin products that I think will be completely separate from what you might see in a CNBC or those kind of, which is why you come to our channel, let's just face it. But the fact that they're talking about this is absolutely off the rails. That's something I would never have said would have happened this early in the cycle. Because really, are we really in a bull run right now? Are we still? I mean, if you just take a look at what happened with Bitcoin yesterday, I mean, it goes up and we lose all the way down to almost 40K. And now the thing is up another 10%. Now, granted, that's a normal day in crypto, but the fact that most markets in the Wall Street types would never be able to tolerate those kind of moves. So This will be a very interesting next 5 years for sure, as we see a lot of these companies and projects start to make their way through. I want to jump over to a couple of tweets here. This is Michael Vandepop. ETF news around the corner, likely an approval for Bitcoin, resulting in a positive inflow of institutions over the coming years. Yep. Ultimately, this will kickstart a bullish run for ETH, which is what I think everybody is waiting on. So do you think that ETH right now is leveraged in the right position? Are you underexposed in ETH? And is there an opportunity here for an ETH ETF to be accelerated? Because I was talking to Safer last year, now it's just a few months ago, James Safer from Bloomberg, and we kind of went back and forth on this whole issue. And at first, when we had our first interview, he was not a fan of it. But then later in the year, I think it was December, we had a chance to talk, and he actually said that he thought an ETH ETF could potentially come to reality around May of 24. So that in itself, along with a lot of utility, remember the clip I just played? The analyst mentioned utility. Well, it wasn't really how he used it. He just simply said companies starting to utilize the tool set. This is something, if you just watched our video on Visa, is a perfect example of how these utility mechanisms are going to start. We are talking about right now, though, the bleeding edge. So you just have to be very aware of that. This is the bleeding edge of these markets. What I mean by that, if you get in right now, you're likely to get cut. So be cautious on any of those situations. Everything is high risk right now when you're getting in this early. But it's also got a great risk-reward opportunity if you actually play it out. Eleanor Tarrant hits on a couple of things here that I thought was interesting that I wanted to note. This is Bitwise Invest Annual Survey of Financial Advisors. It's talking about demographic breakdown. Less than half of 39% of the 437 advisors believe the spot Bitcoin ETF will be approved. So remember who these advisors are. I'm just going to say, they probably have been Wall Street stalwarts, been around for a long time. It's just, this is new internet money. It's not really that kind of thing. But at the same time, you had 64% that cited regulatory uncertainty. At the same time, we're already seeing the courts play out in this with the SEC, which is setting this up for a potential approval, and BlackRock and every other major institution jumping into it. So I'm a little bit surprised that it didn't clip over 50%, but the fact that it went at 39%, okay, I can see that. 88% though said that they're interested in buying Bitcoin, are waiting until a spot is approved, obviously. But the fact that 88% said that they would if a spot was approved, that starts to change things up pretty dramatically. So kind of cool to see all this taking place right now. I think it's going to go slowly and then all at once. And it's going to be one of those things that I think plays out in the markets. Here was a 2024 cryptocurrency adoption and sentiment report. We showed some of these findings before. I'll zoom in on that. 40% of Americans, adults now own crypto, up from 30% in 23. This could mean as many as 93 million people. 63% hope to obtain more cryptocurrency, so their plans are in place. 21% of non-owners said that anticipated Bitcoin ETF makes them more likely. This means 29 million more Americans could join the market soon. And that, I feel, is probably underreported. That's probably going to double, if not triple, just because of the way this data is kind of looked at. And then 46% of Americans think Bitcoin approvals in 2024 will positively. I think that's an obvious one. But the fact that we have seen this, and I think just the rising, look at this nice chart right here. I mean, the rising rates from 21 to what we could see in 24 around all of this. I'd love to get you guys' feedback. Most of you are probably, I was looking at our age demographics here on the channel. It's like a 24 to 45 range, mostly male. So you kind of fall into that demo that fits nicely for what's happening here. But I'm just curious. We actually have some boomers, that I think it's about 8 or 9% that are in the boomer category that are diving into this, which means those are the early adopters and the influencers, meaning they're talking to a lot of other boomers. And that's how, remember Facebook? Does anybody remember what happened with Facebook and the millennial shift between millennials and boomers? Think about that. That could be the kind of adoption curve we're facing right here with what's happening in Bitcoin. So lots happening right now. If Friday results in a hint or a sniff, what I would suggest, be very cautious, because there's no telling where all of this is coming. Look at what just happened with Matrixport and what they did with just one report. That's how volatile this market can be. So just be cautious out there right now, especially on the eve or possibly the verge of an ETF approval. We'll be covering this as quickly as we can. We'll try to keep up to it on Twitter, but stay tuned right here. If you're not subscribed, get subscribed right now to the channel and get in the Diamond Circle. It's the best place to be to get some additional content. And of course, if you're not part of that, all you have to do is click the link down below. Follow me on X, @PaulBaron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.